I don't want to be your entertainment. I want to be a disruptor in your life. You could be the one thing in someone's day or moment that makes them feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not alone.
As our ancestors discovered, failure really means one thing: to be isolated.
Like, it takes work to compassionately tell my body, I know what you feel and I know where it comes from. And that's actually not what's happening right now because we're in a crowd. And our physical bodies also tell us the truth. And I'll tell people we can treat your truth or we can treat your lie.
I do believe that who we are is not this body. This is just a representation of us. One of the greatest lessons I learned and teach my kids is the world will never judge you based on your intent. The world will always judge you based on your actions, because your actions are how you demonstrate who you are to the world. You know what we do here by now. We love to have conversations with some of the most impactful, inspiring, significant individuals on this planet. Some have big names, some don't, but every single one of them moves through the world with power, with impact, and they leave a mark. Today is no different. We have a woman who has a depth of stories. And the few times that I've connected with her, she has brought the fire, not just with her energy, not just with her conviction, but with her clarity and with the absolute ability to demonstrate by example her own healing and the work she does for others. So today, as a psychotherapist, as a neuroscientist, as a motivational speaker, with all of these elements that are integrated into the way that she helps not only herself move through the world, but she now uses it to help others move through the world. So Charryse, Dr. Charryse, it is so good to have you here today.
It is amazing to be here. Amazing.
Well, my dear, we were just talking for a minute about why you're in town, and it's really powerful, and we're going to come back to that. But the one question that I typically start with after I intro, who are you in your words?
Who am I in my words? Man, you know, that's such a hard question. I feel like who I am depends on the day, depends on the moment, honestly.
It's true.
I feel like at my core, I'm an introvert. I am a healer. I am a disruptor. I feel like at my core, I'm a disruptor, and not, disruptive in a way that's harmful, but I've always been that person that I feel like I'm willing to kind of go against the grain if it means widening the scope or supporting someone. I'm big into justice and equity, and seeing people for who they are, helping them see themselves beyond their circumstances, beyond all the things about themselves that they dislike.
That is so beautiful. And I love that response and every single word that you chose. It's pretty amazing. I want to stop and focus on the word disruptor for just a minute. You know, you said not disruptive in the type that creates damage. How do you define being a disruptor? And how have you evolved in that role in your life over the years?
So my definition of disruptor is something that comes in and shifts your course. So if you're kind of going through this motion of repetition in whatever way and you're stuck or not moving, a disruption is like a little tick on a ship that just goes a few degrees and helps you change course. That's how I view it, but it's gentle. It's not thrust. You're not thrown overboard in the process. Over time, I feel like that's something that I've learned about myself. It wasn't something that was a word for me. It literally is something that I think I've only started using within the last year because I didn't realize what I was doing, but someone was talking to me about something that I was sharing. And I said, I don't want to be your entertainment. I want to be a disruptor in your life. I don't want to just give you a great feeling without interrupting the way you do things so that you can actually apply it. So I think disruption has just enough force to go like, I want to be a force in your life so that you can be a force in yours. And I've just watched that grow and change. I think it started off with me being the kid who would look at you if you were off by yourself and go, hey, what's up? What are you doing? And just get into your moment and see you and disrupt what they believe about themselves. And then I feel like over time, I've just been in constant experiences, and now I own it.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. It is also really interesting to me how easily we cannot identify with elements of who we are in the way that others view us. And so no different than what you're doing for so many of your clients, right? This individual and the dynamic of the conversation led to an opportunity for you to see yourself more clearly. I haven't known you that long.
Yeah.
And the little time I've known you, I can tell you that disruptor is absolutely a word I would use to describe you. And in all the best senses of the word, for every way that you just described that. I think it's extremely powerful. You've also said a few times that you really want to be able to help people feel seen.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the 4 components of the human experience that we teach, right? We all want to feel seen and understood. Like, it's critical.
Yeah.
And for you to also say, I'm the kid that used to approach other folks.
Yeah.
There's typically a reason and a cause that gets people to actually outreach, create those safe spaces. What about your early childhood led to you wanting to ensure that others felt seen?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I think I saw too much as a young child, and me helping others or seeing others was my way of managing all this information that I was taking in that was really beyond the point of me taking it in at 5 or 6 years old. So honestly, I feel like that seeing other people came out of my own trauma experiences. I wouldn't have known that, until later in understanding it. But I have so many early childhood moments of being in the room and going, oh, it's safer not to be seen.
Yeah.
But then also going, that's not always true in every situation. And I think what I went through in my early childhood taught me you never know what people are going. You cannot look at them. No one would have seen me sitting in class and raising my hand and known what had happened the night before.
Right.
So I think that gave me this really deep sense of you could be the one thing in someone's day or moment that makes them feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not alone.
You say you saw too much. We never know what happened the night before you were in school. Give us a little bit of insight into the trauma and what you experienced, because what you just described as well about making yourself small, hiding who you are, is a really typical response for early childhood. And I'm going to call it trauma, whether it's a big T or little t.
Yeah.
But as it relates to you, what were some of the things that you saw and experienced that were associated with the trauma that you look at today?
Yeah. Things like other adults and caretakers in your life crying themselves to sleep, or individuals being strung out on drugs, being awake in the morning or awoken in the middle of the night and needing to go sit in the car on the way to managing a crisis, watching people that I love and care about fight in ways that were big and scary, right? And going, stay back. What do you do? How do you manage still seeing the people that you love in their pain as who they are and what they want to be? Conversations that were, what's the word I want to use? Demeaning, right? To the people that were involved. And then, being old enough, even at a very young age, where I still understood, right? I understood what was being said. So I think it was that dynamic of sometimes people have this concept of like, oh, they're kids, they don't know what's going on. So there's all these things. And I don't think that was a direct thought. I think things were just happening so fast and that people were surviving and doing the best that they can. So my way of managing that moment was to observe, was to stay back and to pay attention and to learn. And so in some ways that has been very, very helpful. And in other ways, it's still something I have to work on in terms of like not retreating when I start feeling overwhelmed myself and really like having to reassure myself, like, we're good. We're not there yet, even though that's the way your body's firing off, kind of thing.
It's funny. Just this morning, I said to my wife, I woke up this morning and my body was giving me feedback and interference that was causing these things. And I literally said to her, I said, my body is telling me these things, but they aren't true to me right now. Right. And only recently have I been able to really effectively separate the physical cellular response of memory from, both emotion and then cognition. and then ultimately, at least in my work as well, like elevating to mind and consciousness beyond all of this physical body, because I do believe that who we are is not this body. This is just the representation of us. Now, we often get feedback from our bodies because of the cellular memory that's there.
Correct.
And so I'm going to lean into the cellular memory for just a moment.
Sure, I'm for
and then we're going to continue to go a little further.
Yeah.
What was the first age you remember being consciously aware of all those dynamics you just listed? And what were you experiencing both emotionally and intellectually and in the physiological response in your body at that time in your life?
Yeah. I'd say the earliest age I remember would be 5.
Okay.
But my go-to was freeze. So there was no physical sensation.
Interesting.
Completely blunted. It would be full blunt all physical sensations, because physical sensations can throw me off of what I need to do. And then I head to my cognition. I had to think, you know, what, be strategic and that kind of thing. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to friends or people or whoever, we talk a lot about how I may appear situationally very mature, but if you could see what was actually happening inside, it would be like a tornado is erupting. And that's the downside to that cellular dynamic. But you're right. Like, it takes work to compassionately tell my body, I know what you feel and I know where it comes from. And that's actually not what's happening right now because we're in a crowd.
So it's profound. It's real. You know, I just in our community last week. So I had this shift myself in this whole experience. I mean, you don't know much, but you know a little bit about my arm, right? And when I shut off physical pain because it exceeded my ability to cope, I shut off mental, emotional, and spiritual pain for 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
Right. And I've been 12 years really reconnecting with that. And it took a healed physical body to finally open up the ability for me to go to emotion, go to intellect, right? Which actually was reversed for me. I was intellect first and then emotion.
Yeah.
I had to get it back in my body, but then that's what allowed me to elevate. And as I've healed then in each one of those other 3 categories, what's interesting is I was in daily physical pain for nearly 31 years as a result of my injury. Wow. I've been pain-free for 9 months.
Wow.
And so for me, it's been this really interesting path of, I don't remember consciously a life without physical pain. Yeah. It's something I've been working towards and seeking for so long in terms of having the freedom within my own body. And the unconscious pattern that I think I was protecting myself with is that in the past, I've associated the word detachment externally for others, for outcomes, for all these things as like just the removal of attachment, right? Like it's a positive, healthy thing. But as it's related to my body or even my relationships, detachment has been associated with disconnection. Yeah. So there's been this fear of allowing myself to then get back out of my physical body, if we will, in the same ways because of the patterns that have existed. I didn't want to disassociate, disconnect, as I've very physically and literally had a detached arm in the past. Yeah. And so it's been this really cool shift for me because to what you even just said, it's like the empathy and compassion in a conversation with your body to refuse to accept certain narratives that aren't really real to you anymore. Yeah. Right. And so it's like, as I'm getting back out of my physical body, it's like, I've noticed, man, it's creating these emotions. It's creating these thoughts, none of which are accurate to my viewpoint. Right. And it's the first time in my life I've really experienced it, like with separation. Yeah. Which has taken work, right? It's work
so
to get there.
Powerful to get
so
there.
Powerful.
But so like hard because you think this is truth.
Because everything in our bodies, I believe that our bodies are how we react and respond in the world first, right? They tend to be how most people associate love, disconnection, experience, physical movement. Like they experience everything through the physical body, even though we've got 3 higher selves above this body. And so it can be one of our greatest teachers if we're listening, but it can really keep us stuck as well. Because just to that point, it literally convinces us that something is wrong when there is nothing wrong.
Yeah. But to your point too, if you think about it, as infants, that is how we first learn.
Right.
Through physical sensations, through crying. We don't have language. We don't have cognition yet. So if we've had rocky moments at any point, but definitely early ones, then yes, it can really set us up to think whatever our body says is truth. And it's that kind of thought process that I love disrupting of, it's not always true.
Yeah.
It is your truth in the moment.
Correct.
It is truly happening in your body, but you have to understand what narrative is at the foundation and how, if you keep that going, it keeps you stuck.
You know, the way you just described that actually elevated a thought that I've taught for years, which is that it's not just about mindset. It's not just about mental toughness, right? I believe that the highest of high performers, and this is how I've said it historically, I'm shifting it now based on how you just disrupted me. I've always said the highest of high performers understand both their intellectual and emotional narratives, and they know how to balance and regulate between them both, because they'll both tell you the truth and they'll both lie to you. I need to add a third category, though, because it's the physical narratives as well that actually cause the most amount of disruption in both of those. And again, I think our physical bodies actually lie to us more often than the other two do.
Sure. And our physical bodies also tell us the truth. At other times.
Every moment.
Every moment. I will often say, to your point, and I'll tell people, we can treat your truth or we can treat your lie, because it's still important to know those moments where you may have a physical body that you actually know outwardly how to regulate well, but it's incongruent with what you think about yourself. So it is that congruency of knowing how to regulate between all three in truth.
In each moment.
Like
which many people are like, man, it sounds like so much work. And you know what? It is to get there. But once we're in that movement, I don't find it that hard to maintain. It's just simple reminders, right? It's minutes and moments in the low frequency elements versus months and years. It's a totally different game. So if you were first aware of this at 5, at what point did you start to go outside of your own reality to learn, heal, and move yourself?
Yeah, I would say late high school.
Okay.
So late high school, I started having some flashbacks of various moments in life. You know, I can remember every single thing that, like, you would tell me or a client would tell me, but I am in the moment and out in my own life. So there are lots of memories that are purely subconscious and that I can't recall. And people will go, oh, did you remember you did this? And I'm like, nope.
I totally identify with that, by the way.
I have zero clue. So I would say late high school, I had a fairly significant flashback of an event that I had completely repressed. And that was the moment that I started saying to myself, oh, whoa, if that's there, there's other things there. And I'm going to need to start paying attention to how that is impacting not only me, but my relationships with other people. Because trying to manage your own body and your narratives also can create a lot of silent rules around the way you interact with people, because you're seeking safety. And
it's so that's the difference between armor and boundaries, which we'll get to. But I mean, armor, right? It's self-preservation. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. But I knew that some of those self-preservation pieces, if I didn't work on them, weren't going to preserve the things I actually wanted to preserve. And they were going to keep me out of some things that I really desired. And that would also be a part of my healing. So it was late high school that I just started getting curious and reading and asking questions, which I fully think led me down the path to where I am now.
Yeah. To be able to have conscious awareness of those things, even without the answers at such a young age, I think is such a gift. And it's taken much of what I would argue is some natural gifts of intuition that you have and some forced conditioning, right? Which is very likely
real
for many of us, right?
Yeah.
To be able to start to recognize that there are ways that you can move and grow beyond those images, those memories, those moments is extremely powerful. I find it extremely beautiful. But you also had mentioned to me that at late high school, if I remember correctly, you won a rap battle?
I did. It might. I can't even believe I told you that.
I love that you did. I love that you did.
So the rap battle was probably in like early high school, like 9th or 10th grade. We used to go to this summer camp and they had all these different creative outlets. And I was like, I'm entering the rap battle. One of my friends who I know will be like, oh my gosh, it was epic. It was hilarious. And I did. I won first place in that rap battle.
What song?
So it was a song I wrote. Like, it was a song I made up. I totally made it up. And then just because this was my personality, part of my personality, which is so odd, I just asked the guys who were up there, like, hey, just give me a beat and like like, go for it. And they were like, okay. And then I got everybody clapping, and then I just did it. Hilarious.
Do you remember the lyrics? Okay.
I really don't, or I would.
I was going to say, I really want to lean into this moment. Like, this is powerful. I'll just put on a beat. We can see what happens.
I really don't. I mean, you can put on a beat and we can see what happens, but I literally don't. I mean, like, it was a long time ago, but it was so much fun. It was hilarious.
Love that.
Yeah.
In college, I haven't talked to a lot of people about this, but it was something that I like vividly remember. In college, I had 4 or 5 friends that were unbelievably gifted with words, right? And their ability to literally freestyle on a variety of different things. Like, they were unbelievable lyricists, like gifts, right? Yeah. And a couple of them ended up going into the music industry, being producers, like utilizing some of their talents. But I have always had a gift with words, but not necessarily from a rap perspective, right? Same. But I've always loved that music. And so I was drawn to it in college. Yeah. And I would just consistently sit around in these little circles with them, and I would just listen. And every once in a while they'd be like, Brian, go. And I'd jump in. Yeah. But I was just telling somebody a couple of weeks ago, I had the 4-hour drive from Redlands to Phoenix. Every single time between those couple of years, I would literally just turn on beats and I would freestyle to myself in the truck for 4 hours at a time, just to like have fun with words and just see where it went. Cause it was a blast. And I still have fun writing rhymes and different things today. So
yeah, I don't do enough of it anymore to like know how to do it well, but my son does. Like, he creates his own beats and raps really well. So I always tease him. I'm like, you got that from me.
Of course.
You know, yeah. Clearly. Your dad taught you how to do the tracks, but that gift, and he's like, okay.
Because didn't you've shared a song with me, I think, in the past, because your husband's also a musician.
My husband is a musician, yes, and he sings, and they are like, I really, in comparison, I'm like this musically. So yeah, he sings, writes, plays, and then my son raps and creates. Like, they really are musical geniuses. My gift of words is in conversation.
Right. Yeah. And I think even in the imagery that you create and how you show people things, which is really beautiful. I love that. I love that you've got a musically inclined family.
Yeah.
What's your creative outlet?
You know what's wild? I love creating video content. And that is a de-stressor to me that I did not even recognize until COVID, which is so odd, but it is something that I will literally pour myself into, even if it's just like a minute or 2 minutes or anything like that. There's something about taking my words, taking emotion, taking a moment and going, oh, if I'm feeling that, it's likely that there's at least one other person out there who is too. So sitting down, not overthinking, and just pouring myself out that way and creating something that could be of use or that people can come back to is my creative outlet. You surprised?
I identify with that. Okay. No, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all, because I think that given where and how you focus your energies in this world, that makes complete sense, right? And it's an additional ability for you to not only release things from yourself real time, which alleviates your own internal suffering and understanding, but also it connects with other people in a way that you get them moving. No, it doesn't surprise me at all. I also enjoy that, right? So I mean, I resonate with that. I didn't even believe I was a creative person until probably 4 years ago.
Accurate. That's why I said until COVID, because prior to that, I didn't see the things that I was doing as creative. Yeah. They were just, hey, this is helpful. This is necessary. Let me create this that way. But part of what happened 4 years ago was I needed to find a way to connect with all the people who were trying to connect with me and balance my own energetic state of I can only be present.
Which as a healer is so important, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it became this incredible, like, oh, I can still support others and not overwhelm my empathetic system. And so that became a really great way. And because the demand over the last 4 years has been exponential and
it's not slowing down.
It's not slowing down. So it's just a really great way to kind of keep that going. But I genuinely do love it.
How do you do that? Like, let me ask the question a little bit better.
Yeah.
Do you have like structured recording time? Do you do things on the fly and in the moment and inspiration? Yeah. Like, I'd love to understand your creative process because it's different for everybody.
Yeah. So I'm a total in the moment. Okay. Like, I would love to be one of those people who was like, every Monday I'm doing this, every I cannot do it. I think part of that is having ADHD and the way that my brain works. Even when it comes to writing, I can't write 500 words a day.
Yeah.
It's a feeling. Like
I am the exact same way.
Yes, I can feel the moment. And when that moment comes, I'm like, what can I move out of my day? Because I have to create early moments, but I've learned to trust that and I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I know when that feeling is there. I know when I've come across something that's inspiration, and then I'm like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
If I try to be methodical, it's just, you can tell it's not the same.
So it's interesting because I like genuinely am and have always been a very disciplined person. But I think there was a big period in my life that I shamed myself into structure, even though I'm not a structured person, right? Like I am very in the moment, very on the fly like you. I feel things, I lean into them. And that's part of the reason I don't even allow, like my team doesn't let me even touch my calendar anymore because I've let go to a point that like my belief and perception of time I can run on my calendar. I know where to be and when, but if I have to like schedule something, it's like, it's gone, right? What do you think, and I know I've done some work at least in myself, what do you think is one of the greater contributors of us either believing that we are not creative or shutting down our creative urges?
Yeah. I think one, creativity is often only seen through very simple lenses, right? In the sense of creatives are typically, you do art or you do music. That's what we're taught is creative.
Right.
So anything outside of that is not often voiced. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think people shut their creativity down for a lot of different reasons. You know, I will tease my family because they can't do anything about it. They are phenomenal, incredible perfectionists, right? So the thing that I may have a different kind of creativity, but I'm the one who's just like, just do it, just put it out there. There's somebody that, and they're like, please stop. It needs to be, you know, this way. I'm like, nobody really cares. They just want to see this. So I think people wanting it to be great, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that the things that I do, I don't want to be great, but I just have a personality that says, I don't care who likes it. It's for that one person who it resonates with. But I think our perfectionism can keep us small. I think if we've been invalidated in prior attempts to be creative, I think just even sometimes doubt or that balance between I want to be seen, but if I'm seen, will I be accepted and will I be okay? And, you know, can I hide? Like I even went through moments where I would hold myself back a few years ago and I've had to push and I'm still being encouraged to push even more because I would only go as far as I knew I could retreat. And it was scary for things to get bigger because that would mean that, well, if I actually put this out there, then I have to continue. I have to be consistent in a different way. So I even think that those physical sensations that happen or that is it safe for me to operate at this pace? Because trauma for me also meant I need to be able to pull back and go in my shell when I need to and come back out. But you cross this line that you go like, once you're out, you're out. You know, like you can't,
it's the truth.
Can't stop. So, and that's a choice. You have to really choose to operate at that place, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. I mean, it is absolutely a choice. And I think it's a choice down to every single moment. I mean, I try to really simplify things in my own world when I tend to get this sense of overwhelm because it's just literally one step, one moment, one breath at a time. Like that's all I can control. And it's also the only thing that's real. Where are you still protecting yourself?
Oh, all up in my business, Brian. No, where am I still protecting myself?
I feel like your business is your business, though.
It is. It is. It's fine. It's okay. It is. So I'm still protecting my boldness in a way. And some people would probably hear that and go, what? You know, you're one of the boldest people I know. Oh, there's levels to it. And there's still a part of me that knows I need to be more bold in some ways. And I'm right on the cusp, but I'm not there yet.
Where do you need to be more bold?
I need to be more bold in sharing my story every time I talk. You know, I share bits and pieces of it, and not out of fear, but just I think out of over tailoring to certain aspects and environments, but I need to be more bold in that. I need to be more bold in consistently sharing what I'm passionate about. I think my business is my business, but I also don't ever want people to think, well, every time we talk and interact with one another, I am trying to sell you something. But I think that narrative keeps me from speaking my passion boldly, because of not wanting people to feel a certain way, which is an assumption, which may or may not be true. And I have some really great people in my life, and specifically over the last 3 months, they are like, I need more. Like, you say this here, but I need you to say it here. So I think there's a few narratives that I need to figure out where they honestly came from, and how to push past them.
There is a ridiculous amount of similarities to the way you and I have operated. I really struggle in the personal and professional development world with the concept of people thinking that I want something from them and then for them.
Yes.
Right. Which is so much what you have just said.
It's exactly.
Right. And part of it for me was the upper side of shame, right? It's not the I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. It's when I shut that down and show up in the arena. It's who do you think you are? Right? Who do you think you are to be so bold? Who do you think you are to like share all these examples and assume that it's going to help people? Right. It's these little subtle nuances. What I'm curious about is it feels like what you've talked to me about in terms of being in the moment and then overly structuring talks, those don't seem congruent.
Yeah. They're not. And I don't necessarily over structure the talk, but I'm filtering in the process. Like, I am too efficient at filtering. I know when I can go, and there's certain spaces that if I'm super comfortable in that space and there is no filter, and those are the times that people most enjoy. But I also know that there are moments that I don't. And it's funny, as you're talking, it just clicked why I have been, I don't want to say misunderstood, but I think when people don't know who I am first, I feel like if they get that part of me, they'll choke, right? And so it's not a shame. It's not even a who do you think you are. I absolutely know who I am. And I just think it can be a lot for some people. And I don't want it to be misconceived. And I don't like misperceptions around who I am. And so there's this,
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And when I say the who do you think you are, that's often what's connected to that narrative.
Yeah. Okay.
At least in my interpretation. Yeah. I think that what you just talked about, though, is I make jokes that I'm best in bite-sized pieces. Like, I'm a lot to handle. Yes. Like, I'm very intense. I have and I mean, even people who come to our retreats are like, you just have this look in your eye. Like, I'll meet people all the time and they're like, they'll look at me and they'll be like, oh, you see way beyond my eyes, don't you? I'm like, oh yeah.
Yes.
Right. And so there are a lot of people that just by the nature of who I am, being in my presence, whether it's an active engagement or not with that individual, will think and feel things that they may not in any other environment.
Yes.
And inherently, that is my gift. Right. And my presence is the present. And why I call it attention to you is that your rawness, your authenticity, unfiltered and unbridled, is your power. And so just like we were talking about earlier with the armor and where we start to, I teach this concept of the second we protect ourselves, we disconnect ourselves.
Yeah.
So you even said it. It's like in certain environments, if I'm really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, how do you facilitate and fabricate the lowering of your armor, even in the times that your body's telling you that you're not?
That's a good question. Yeah. It's really to me, it boils down to choice.
It is. It's 100% choice.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it's like manufacturing anything. It's me choosing, this is me, operate that way. But I so resonate with that. I'm best in bite size.
Dude, I totally am.
You know what I mean? Like,
and I'm like the fun size too, or the bite size even.
Yeah. and I have a sense immediately for the people who I know, I need to be fun size for you. And I know the people who I'm like, I can be a full bar for you, and you're not going to.
Right. You're not going to choke. You're going to be good to go.
Yeah. So I think it's a process of choosing.
And I think it's also a process for you of trusting in those moments that you always see what you need to do.
Yeah.
and surrendering to the fact that you don't need to access knowledge. You don't need to access stories. The wisdom will flow through you.
Yeah.
Because it always does.
Yeah.
Every time I've interacted with you, the wisdom always flows. And maybe it's because you feel comfortable in the space, but the reality of it is there's no reason for you not to in any environment. And I'm going to say one more thing because this is so important.
Okay.
The way you speak, the way you move, and the way you move energy through people is a gift. I've witnessed it. I've followed and seen you on social. I see the level of engagement you have within your communities. It's a gift. And so anytime that you start to withhold any portion of that, you're actually doing everyone that you're serving a disservice.
That hits. Yeah.
And so your self-preservation is actually doing those who you want to impact a disservice.
And I'm right on the line of recognizing that, right? I think for most of my life, self-preservation was such a strong survival skill.
It's ingrained.
And I was
it's the core purpose of our nervous system.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally why it exists.
I mean, and it's funny because like self-preservation to the point where people would go like, you just make me think I know you, but I don't really know you. I'm like, you know the parts of me that I would like for you to know. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I am on the edge of needing to let that armor fully down because I know if I don't, I am, not giving to the people who are near me and a part of my community, but also then I'm not fully given to myself. And I'm like, I'm asking myself now in this moment, what am I afraid of? Yeah, I don't know that I don't know. I don't know.
So let me ask that question a different way. Instead of what are you afraid of? If you know that this is the area that you are still protecting yourself, this need to be more bold, to lean in and do these things, what are you protecting?
Retreat. That I can always answer.
So, but what are you're protecting your own retreat and you're not wanting that internal retreat? Or help me understand what you mean by that.
So I'm protecting being able to pull back, like there's an element of the more you're out there, the more you're out there, but I enjoy going, okay, I want to disappear for a few weeks and let me back away.
Yeah.
And that isn't possible once you start that engagement.
Why?
Or I guess I've told myself it's not possible once you.
I'm just asking you why.
No, I'm really just kind of thinking out loud. So I think it's just I love the dynamic of being out there in the boldness, but I also love the moments of I still just want to be unseen sometimes.
And oh, by the way, it can be both. I don't view it as mutually exclusive. I view it as an entire ebb and flow of who you are.
Yeah.
Right? The very first thing you said in answering the who are you question was I'm an introvert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so what does that mean? That even though people see how bold, how expressive, how charismatic, how seemingly you can be the life and energy of any room, right? You also need that time to retreat.
I do.
Right? And so I would argue that by feeling like you need to always be bold, I would argue that the only way for you to be bold is if you get those moments of retreat. And so it's then a matter of how do I integrate this in a way that I get those moments to refill who I am. And oh, by the way, what's really funny about this is I used to believe I was an extrovert. I'm not. I'm not. I am very much an introvert. And I very much need quiet, alone, intentional time.
Space should be one of the love languages.
I mean, truly. Yeah. And to the point that my wife and I typically once a month one of us will go away for 24 hours to a Airbnb, right, whatever, just for that purpose, because she's an introvert as well. She needs that same time. So I guess that's what I would ask is, why do you believe that they're directly correlated?
I feel like for me, it's because I'm constantly, my brain goes into overdrive, right?
Yeah.
So I take the moments to retreat and I'm great about, here's a boundary, but it's also then me getting in that moment and actually being in that moment, that breath, and not being in the moment because I have the weekend away. But while I'm there, let me go ahead and map out this really cool creative project, which defeats the point. So it's almost like learning how to drive, or having a bad analogy, but it's the one in my head. It's like having a superpower and going like, I have to learn how to use this because I can feel it and it's so big that it can send me into overdrive, and then I'm not sleeping at night because my brain will not rest until I get this creative project mapped out. And just kind of learning, because I've kind of kept it here for so long.
Yeah.
So it's a process.
It's kind of like you just have to develop the Clark Kent to your Superman.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like the alter ego that's still the same person, but allows yourself to navigate in different ways. I'm grateful that you're having this conversation and that you're allowing it to just happen real time in the moment. Because this, I believe, are some of the greatest ways that we can see each other and start to move. And again, there's so much resonance in the way that you and I operated. Just like you've said so many things that I feel like in a chill with like all the way down my spine. It's just unbelievable. So you had mentioned one more thing from your past that I want to bring up before we shift into more of the present and future. I find it really fascinating that your dad was Indigenous and born in a cornfield.
Yes.
Give me a little bit of background to your father's background and maybe what some of those ripple effects and generational patterns did in your life, and maybe even continued down beyond you.
Yeah.
Help us understand, because that's a really big role in identity, and that's a big shift. So I'd be fascinated to understand.
So I'm referring to my biological father, who most of what I know about him comes from word of mouth from my siblings. And part of that is I'm the youngest of 4, but there's a big gap. Me and the next sibling is 7, then 8, and then 9 years. So my parents were divorced when I was divorced when I was 5. So beyond that point, we had very limited interactions. But what I came to learn about him, and I have memories of him when we were all together in the same home, was that he was Indigenous, born in a cornfield, working on a cornfield by 2nd grade, really didn't have parents who were able to care for him or necessarily wanted to, then navigated to New York to stay with a grandparent, went to school up until 7th grade, and then was essentially left in an apartment and abandoned when he was in 7th grade, which is when school starts. And he kind of said, okay, I've got to hustle to survive. Met my mom years later. And part of why that story has become so intricate is there are definitely moments where I had to learn to see him and understand why he wasn't the father that I wished I would have had. And in one of the last conversations I had with him before he passed away from a gunshot wound was, he said, I stayed away because I felt like you would be better without me in your life. And that is a double-edged sword. In some ways, by the time we had that conversation, I understood what he was saying. But in other ways, I don't know if that was true, right? Because there's things that I don't know in terms of like, where does this part of me come from? You know, I know my mom really well. She raised me and that kind of thing. So I'm grateful to have siblings that ask questions. And I say that's amazing because that was his story, but he was always really big on education. My mom, when she left high school, had to work, wasn't allowed to go to college. And she also grew up in a situation where it was, you're a woman, you just need to go get married and raise a family. You don't really need to go to school. So I'm grateful that I have been able to learn in ways that they were never able to do. In their own ways, they have provided me with things, but I definitely have come to learn that I feel like some of my earthy, my greatest memories of him are learning how to fish, learning how to like garden, learning how to like throw a coconut down and get the pieces off and those kind of things. And so I feel like that aspect of me is very him. Or I tease my siblings. My siblings are very disciplined and very structured and very work here and stay here. And I'm always like this. And I'm like, what is that? I'm like, my father. Now, my father was a hustler. So he used that gift to the way that he knows how. But I fully now have learned my creative mind and my ability to take an idea and turn it and go, this will work, comes from him. but I didn't realize that until so much later in life.
Yeah. You know, it part of the reason I didn't even realize that he wasn't active in many parts of your life when I asked the question. And it's fascinating because truly there are genetic inheritances that take place in who we are. And, you know, we've both, my wife and I, traced ours back 3 generations, at least to the places that we've been able to be aware of. Right. And there's still blind spots and gaps because there's lots that we don't know. But I do find it fascinating because the cellular memory that we inherit, even the trauma that we inherit from literally birth, comes through our genetics and our lines. And so the background and past that he had that's shaped many parts of who you are is really fascinating given the disconnection that took place. Right. And I think that's a really great example of just nature and how that can, you know, also be combined with nurture. What do the numbers 414 and 441 mean to you?
So I was a school teacher in 2011 in September of 2001. On September 11th, that's what I was thinking, in Frederick, Maryland, which is about 35 or 40 minutes away from DC, 20 minutes away from Camp David. And so 9 months pregnant when the September 11th happened. And I'm with kids who have parents at the Pentagon and with them all night. And at the same time, maybe a mile away from where I was teaching school, my mom was battling cancer. Came home that day, and fast forward about a week, she had gone into the hospital. She was in room 441 with some cancer pain. And we pretty much knew she was at her last point of life. And I was, again, 9 months pregnant. And then my son was late and then decided to come. And so I was in room 414. She was in room 441. I had him on September 17th at 9 p.m. And then at 1 a.m., my stepfather came into the room to tell me that my mother had passed away. Now, in between that time, had him at 9 p.m., got up at 11 p.m., said, I need my baby. I need to go to oncology. You know, they're like, wait, he's, you know, not had any vaccines or whatever. And I was like, my mother's dying down the hall. I need my child. Walked down to her. She came out of morphine, which just doesn't really happen.
Right.
You know, and
not at that point.
It's not rare. At that point. No, it's so rare. And I just said, I love you. I'm safe. He's safe. She said her prayer was always to hang on until her last grandchild was born. And you can let go. And a few hours later, when my father came in, she did. Yeah.
Every part of my body lit up when you were talking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most beautiful moments in your life combined with, you know, one of the greatest moments of loss within a 4-hour span.
Yeah.
I mean, that's profound. How did that impact your first year of being a mother to your son?
It was brutal. My mother, was the only thing that was home. Right? Like, we moved. I went to a different school every year until high school when I said, I need to stay in one place so I can get recommendations.
Yeah.
So throughout every change in my life, the only thing that was home was her. It was awful. I had a 20-month-old child as well, a daughter. And I just knew, like, you've got to stay calm enough to nurse your child. And the benefit of having him is it kept me from fading.
Yeah. Because
I knew, like, every 2 hours, this is what you have to do. Change a diaper, nurse a child. But it was the absolute hardest thing to do. I didn't want to celebrate, like I remember Christmas was coming and I had an aunt who was like, I get it, but you're also going to have a child that's going to once look back and go, what was my first Christmas like? And can you find the space, how could you honor your mom essentially? And that was our favorite holiday, but it was really difficult. But I also will say my kids saved my life. They they swam beneath the current with me in ways that other people couldn't, and they were just super perceptive. My daughter, who is just such an empath, would just come up and lay her hand on my cheek.
That's special.
But it was tough. It was really tough.
Yeah. I liked that analogy. They were the ones swimming below the current with you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we were talking before we started recording today about just the special relationship that you still have with them today.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly that was fostered over years and lots of intention.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about how, you know, our kids end up becoming some of our greatest teachers, right? Some of our greatest coaches.
Yeah.
So what is the top thing that your kids taught you about yourself?
I think the top thing that I would say that they teach me about myself is, or reinforce in a way, is like, they're good with who I am the way I am, and other people will be too, right? So there's this element of me that's always been like, I don't really care what people think because I don't have time to care what people think. I'm trying to survive. But I think they're so accepting. I think you can go into parenthood and feel like, oh, I need to be this way and I need to be that way. And they've both been like, we're great with who you are, just the way you are as our mom.
Yeah.
It's okay if you can't make, I'm not making your costume. I'm going to get you the very best one that Amazon has. But we're not putting it down.
And it'll be here in 2 days.
And it'll be here in 2 days. 3 if they're having a difficult moment. Right? So they just reinforce and remind me that, like, everything I needed in order to be their mom was already in me.
Yeah.
And they're good with it. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves. What if I mess them up? They just want your heart.
Yeah.
They just want connection. They just want memories and presence. And that I can give. And that was what I always had to give. Everything else is just a bonus. I think so. Those two things, like, the world is good with who I am, and your greatest gift is your presence, and everything else is just a bonus.
How would they describe you?
Oh, very interesting. I think my daughter would describe me as someone who's, like, bold and doesn't take anything from anyone. Like, I'm big on, like, nope, you need to communicate, you need to say this, you need to do that. So almost like a little justice fighter in terms of that. I think my son would say that I am kind and caring and hardworking, and I make good food.
How was it for you to receive their outreach to check in on you when they went away?
Oh my gosh. It was first funny because they go away and then they're like, why are you out? What are you wearing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm like, wait, you know what I mean? So it was wild, and it's been really sweet at the same time. Like, I think all the time, I have young adult kids who choose to stay in constant contact with me. Like, I'm not clawing and going like, please call home. But, like, we have legitimately transitioned into friendships, you know, that are similar yet unique in different ways. So I think it's very sweet. Like, on my way here, because we always just have a habit of letting each other know out of safety where we are. Have a great week. Enjoy yourself. Let me know when you get there. Let me know when you land. So it's really sweet. And I also definitely commend my husband, who we call the protector, because he's always grew up in inner city New York. So he's always like about security. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So it's neat to see how they have also taken that part of him. It's not as intense because it's not mixed with trauma for them.
Yeah.
But it's really sweet to see that. And so it just makes them really loving and caring and thoughtful.
Yeah. Sounds like your kids are home for you too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Where or who did you learn the power of self-advocacy and advocating for others?
I learned it from watching my mom not do it.
Wow. For herself or for others?
For herself.
Okay.
I watched her not feel the liberty to have the words, not be given permission to have the words, being shamed into not having the words. And I vividly went, that I will not do, you know? And I remember even as a child, I would have the words when she didn't. You know, one of the things that I do remember, my mom was like, honey, I love you, but you and your mouth,
Yeah.
like, we're going to have to work on that. She said it will either be your greatest strength or your greatest struggle. So that might also be part of, you know what? That's also part of that. Like, I've worked really hard to go like, filter, you know what I mean? Because it can be, and I wouldn't, it's not hurtful, you know, like it wouldn't be at this point. I know better. But I remember specifically going, I will not allow the world to cause me the pain that you shoulder because I am silent.
I think that's unbelievably powerful.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. Yeah, it's funny, even as you said that, it's, you know, a lot of my old narratives, right? I have a big energy, and a big energy delivered through armor is really confusing for people, right? Like, because it's, and then it has associated labels like, right, arrogant, conceited, right, over cocky, asshole, right? And it's like all of those things, which clearly were not my intent, nor how I was believing I was coming across. My actions or my energy delivered through armor would cause enough confusion that was still the outside associated narrative. And it's like, I had to work for years to shed even the labeling of those 4 or 5 different things based on my intensity, how bold and loud I can be, because I'm not any of those things. But I had to learn how to deliver those. I had to learn how to like create access for that. And you've more than once today hit on a couple of really critical things. My wife and I, when our kids were born, said a couple of things. We want them to know who they are. We want them to know that they will be loved unconditionally. And we want them to know how to advocate for themselves. Because if they can have those 3 things, if everything else falls off the rails, I believe that they will be able to know who they are and see who others are. They'll be able to love themselves and love others, and they'll be able to advocate for themselves and advocate for others. And you've lived your life basically in those 3 lanes. You've said it in different ways today, but I think that's an unbelievable gift that you gave your kids, because to your point exactly, for them to have all of the power, all the protection, without all the associated trauma, creates freedom. And it's like a next generation that just can continue the path that you've already created. And that doesn't mean that they're going to do what you do, right? Which is really, really unbelievable.
Can I come back to one quick thing?
Please.
So as you were talking, you know, another thought came. Part of my armor feels necessary as a Black woman.
I'm happy you said that.
Right? So the other aspect of the boldness is received differently
by different people.
There's
an absolute truth to that.
Right? So that's the other aspect of knowing the places where, okay, I can operate in that area of boldness, and it's not seen as another demonstrative, like stereotypical, over the top Black woman,
which again,
not coming from that place.
You've been hushed and silenced for years around that, and we know what is perceived in in the public eye. We know what's happened with police and other situations. That is, I'm really happy you brought that into the conversation. What's not lost on me is that all of those same things packaged in a white male body, I have access to places and people that others might not, which meant that I have not had to be as careful in some of the places that I've been bold that others have been conditioned to believe. I would love for you to speak on that a little bit more, though, if you're willing.
I
am. What has been your experience when you've stepped out and people weren't prepared to receive your power, your voice in your body?
They're intimidated, and they believe that my power is attempting to be a reflection on their lack of power.
So it's a zero-sum game, always.
It is always seen as, wow, that is a lot. Are you doing that because you think that I am not doing something well? I had a work situation where I was working with someone. She was a white cisgender female, and she was talking about everything that was happening and what was going on, and could we all help more in this environment? Game on, turned it up. Couple of weeks later, sat down for a meeting. I noticed that you're doing X, Y, and Z, and I am wondering if that is because you do not think I'm doing a great job at
Right.
What? I am doing more because you asked us to do more.
Right.
So a lot of times my full power intimidates the daylights out of a lot of people, which then creates various reactions, one of which is bite-size it down. So it's this bite size to see how much of that can an environment handle. Ironically, there's only been 2 moments in my entire life that I can identify where I've been connected to people that did not see my full power as threat, recognized it immediately, and weren't intimidated by it. And they were 2 white cisgender males. One of them was a principal when I used to teach school in Maryland. And one of them is someone that I just recently met. So I know immediately when people are, but that's usually the biggest dynamic. So as a Black woman, we have to be very articulate around how we say things and tiptoe.
Well, and even energy and volume and cadence and all of it.
Yes.
Because it all affects these preconditioned beliefs that are not real, are not true, but our society has shaped many to believe are. Thank you for bringing that up. What's funny is 3 times today you have jumped to a place either in your answer or in jumping in, literally in a flow of where I was going to ask a following question, which just continues to show the synchronicity that exists here. I love it. I was involved, and I haven't talked about this a lot recently, just because the situation hasn't presented itself. But I would tell you that it's been interesting because when I grew up in Arizona, though it's a very diverse population, there's less than, at least I don't know the current stat. 20 years ago, when the last time I looked at it, there was less than 1% of our population that was Black.
I actually believe it's still.
I think it's right around there. I think it's right around there. I don't think it's grown significantly. And I had this big belief and desire because I wanted to leave Arizona, right? Because perspective always points us at what's important. And I'm like, I'm missing out on something, but I didn't realize it, right? To the point that it's like I had all these conditioned beliefs, right, that really were rooted in just lack of experience, right? You could call it ignorance, but it was also just lack of exposure in some cases. And I intentionally inserted myself into different environments. I ended up becoming a part of an organization that was founded as a result of the Rodney King riots. And it was all around diversity, equity, inclusion, multiculturalism. And it was a profound experience for me. I remember freshman year, we went to Goodwill as we were joining this brotherhood. And I was with a buddy who grew up in Fontana, right? And has very, very clear understandings of what his skin color has said about him in different places. We get to Goodwill and we both have backpacks. And he goes, I can't go in. And this was literally one of the first times I remember. I was 18 and I'm sitting here like, why, like, right? What do you mean? And he goes, because the second I walk in with a backpack, I'm going to have eyes on me.
Be followed around the store.
I mean, I'm getting chills because it literally grounded me in that moment where I again, just the stark contrast of our realities. I've never once questioned whether I walk in a place with a backpack, right? And the privilege that's associated with that. It's unbelievable to me, the conditioned knowledge of ignorance that exists, right? On top of the things that are unconscious and not necessarily a reflection of bad people or bad beliefs. How do you advise and guide people, regardless of skin color, right? Anyone who's felt objectified in a group that's, less than, in an outsider category. How do you advise people to put themselves in situations to continue to open, to continue to connect, and to, without having the burden of it, also using their situations and stories to potentially open perspective for others.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the person. And I say that to go, each person has to decide, is it a burden or is it not?
Yep.
And are they willing to teach and educate, or do they just want to do that in terms
Yep.
of the people that are in life with them? One of the biggest things that I advise people to do is do life with people who are not like you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we do life with people that are not like us, those are the moments that we learn to see differently. It reduces stereotypes if there's enough eclecticism there, because you've had so many shared experiences that it diminishes that. I remember one of the most challenging things around the last time of elections and racial trauma and all the different dynamics is I'm raising two young adult, children that are right at that age. I'm raising a son who I've had to teach lessons about backpacks and what you're wearing and giving eye contact since he was 4.
Yeah.
Right. In order,
which is the reality for most Black families. I mean, it's the truth.
Right. And so I remember someone asking me a similar question, like, man, what is this like now in your home with all of this tension? And I said, it's challenging, but we've always done life with an array of people.
Yeah.
So there's no propaganda or narrative that's going to be spoken that will supersede the fact that we've done vacations together, we break bread together, we do life together, we play on teams together. So I think the biggest thing is, if we would just do life intentionally in diverse spaces, we don't have to go looking for anything. We don't have to even intentionally. Those are great things to do if you don't have those opportunities. But I think find your part that you're willing to play, whatever that is, and play it. I'll give one more example. There are different seasons where people would talk about, wanting to be a part of the movements toward equity. And at one point, a big part of that might have been a riot, right? Or picketing. And that is not my energetic gift as an empath and an introvert. That would make me anxious. I don't even go to concerts, right? So I remember that coming in and going, that is not my part.
Right.
My part is to teach, to educate, to share these stories, to have these spaces. I'm fully willing and don't feel it is a burden. I'm open to it. I believe I say it. I'm a hybrid for a reason. I'm able to say things and be in spaces that not everyone would even want to be in.
Right.
And I'm comfortable with that. But I think it's knowing your part and knowing what you're comfortable with and being okay with that.
Yeah.
The biggest place that we can create change is within our home. That's the most consistent place in your life. And if you can do that there, outside will take care of itself.
Yeah. And here's the other truth to it. Inside ourselves are the places that we can understand and heal. So that outside of ourselves, it's no longer an issue. I mean, it's no different, whether it's our home or our internal selves, like that is truth. The part that's been interesting is the one thing I can identify with, and I want to be really clear when I say this, there's no comparison. It's not saying I understand others. I understand what it's like to be the only one in many rooms.
Yeah.
Right. And I understand what it's like to have eyes on me without understanding. I understand what it's like to be limited or have assumptions connected to me because of my physical situation.
Yeah.
Right. Now, those are very different culturally and socially than many other of these types of things. But I think that all of those give us some lens of compassion and understanding for others, because I would tell you that a lot of people that we attract are brilliant misfits. Right. And I say that in all the best ways possible, like those that just have always felt like an outsider in some form or fashion, but like their brilliance is so obvious and right in front of us. When did you realize your brilliance?
Honestly, it has been within the last 18 months.
Wow.
Because I did not see it. I would be asked to do something or have an opportunity and literally go, I don't understand why they asked me. Like, I can do it, I'm capable, but I'm confused. I don't see it. I'm really just now starting to get, okay, my brain and my way of seeing life and doing things is much more unique than I realized, but I didn't get it. And I feel like over the last 18 months, I've just had so many different experiences and people who would say it to the point that like I needed to listen and go, okay. And then I would be in spaces and then go, oh, okay. My brain said this, that brain said that, you know, but it within the last 18 months. And I know that some people will be like, what are this in my eyes, this is just who I've always been.
Yeah.
It's just being seen. Like, so for me, you know, like people will often, my family, I am just mom and honey, you know, like nothing big there going on in the house, which I love, right?
Yeah.
And so people will ask the kids or ask my husband, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. Do you love our wisdom? And they're like, she's been talking like this all of her life. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad she can talk to you guys about, you know, that kind of thing. So I never saw it as anything different. But now I realize, okay, no, it is.
You realize the
different.
brilliance in what you believed was normal.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to lose the part of me that sees it as my normal self, but I also need to continue to become comfortable with it's okay for me to see my brilliance.
Yeah.
Because again, that's not often a context that's afforded, you know, in life. There's that line of it being cocky, you know, or you're a little much. Brilliance and passion can often be perceived as arrogance and cockiness, which is really sad. I'll give you a silly example that kind of fits. I was flying here yesterday, and just decided I wanted to wear something that was vibey, that I loved. And this woman walks by, she goes, I love your outfit. She was like, but I dressed for comfort today, not fashion. What? And I said, well, actually, I'm extremely
unbelievably comfortable.
Yeah. But the fact that, again, what I was wearing, sitting in the seat off to myself, made her feel like, let me give you the compliment, but also it isn't another example of how that is perceived. I'm like, well, what makes you assume that I'm not comfortable? Why are you telling me this? Why do you think that my light is trying to shine on you in a way that isn't fitting? You know, like this is just someone going down the aisle. And I think we do things like that, some of us a lot, whether we verbalize it or not, is a different dynamic. But I have a lot of people who, because they're comfortable, will say things to me that they don't realize I catch. And I may not always respond, but I catch what they're throwing down.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Of course you do. You're unbelievably aware, and you read situations and people like books. I mean, you really do. And it's again, as much a gift as it has been conditioned into your life. I also think it's interesting the situations that people feel they have permission to comment. Right? That one hit you.
That one hits. Woo! Yeah.
Can you expand on what just hit you?
Oh my gosh. The things that people say. And I feel like all of those situations are all there at one time, but people feel very comfortable commenting. So my parents were ministers, my mother and my stepfather, and I am a licensed minister as well as a licensed therapist, right? So I remember like maybe my first tattoo, or multiple, the number of messages and different things. So I am rocking the boat.
Yeah.
You love Jesus and you've got a nose ring and tattoos and you wear red lipstick? Like you
tone yourself down.
Seriously, like you laugh, but I mean, I was at a conference and I almost left it, a retreat. And it was a faith-based conference. And someone said, well, how do you think your mom would feel about your tattoos? They are lucky I prayed that day. Because you don't even know my mother, number one. And number two, if you did, you would know she would be fine and fully expect it from me. But that comment was hurtful for you to insinuate that my deceased mother would not be pleased with who I am. because I have a sleeve
Right.
is ridiculous.
That's one of those where you want to spout off and be like, who the fuck are you?
I absolutely wanted to. But instead, I was like, hey, babe, calm me down. And my wonderful husband showed up there the next morning because I was like, if I'm going to stay, I need you here. But that was I was furious. Right. But it's one of many examples of people also even visually trying to go, wait a minute, you've got sleeve and this and that, but you can talk neuroscience and, you know, because why are you putting it in a box as if it has to look one way or the other? So those are all a part of that, you know, I want you to see me, but can you handle it?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I totally 100% resonate. You know, it's interesting. When I did this haircut for the first time, maybe 2.5 years ago, I, for a long time, was rocking just a mustache. And I didn't have facial hair for years because I didn't believe I could grow it. And the number of comments that I would get, particularly for the combo of my haircut and my mustache, like I decided I just left it for 18 months. Like I was just something I was doing for fun. And then I was like, now it's a social experiment. Right. I mean, 90% of conversations I would get into, my mustache would come up as the topic of conversation, not me bringing it up.
Why?
Right. But again, it's like the nuance of like these little minute things that it's like, wait, what? Like, and again, the whole point of people feeling they have permission to say things. I mean, the shaming on new mothers, the shaming on women in general, what you should and shouldn't do in any category. Right. It's fascinating to me because all it does is create divide. All it does is create defense. All it does is create armor. All it does is condition and cause us to view these things. And so much of our conversation today is rooted in the fact that I think so much of society really does view life as binary in many situations. And they view it as a zero-sum game. Right. So you getting something means I'm losing something when that's not the truth. Like there is abundance in every area of life if we open ourselves to it. What do you think are the greatest ways that we can break down those beliefs to further the advancement of equity in this world?
Yeah. Conversations like this, honestly, you know, sitting and having real, raw, honest conversations and allowing other people in because they're conversations that they need to have and want to have because, you know, whether it was the lady at the retreat or the lady on the plane, they don't realize that what they said, and I knew that, you know, was coming through their own lens of doubt or shame or beliefs. But I think it goes back to relationship. When we take the time to not only engage in presence, but build relationship and really get to know people, then I feel like it helps reduce or takes the residue of that binary belief system and starts to erase it and go, don't box people in. That was one of the things that, man, my mom taught me so much in the 25 years she was in my life. And one of those was contrary to how she was raised, because she was raised in a very tough, religious, judgmental home, was never judge someone by their exterior. You get to know them first. You talk to them. You interact with them. You energetically get in their space to the degree that you feel comfortable. So I think it's getting out of our comfort zone, building relationships, and taking the time to step back and reflect, where is my own lens being projected and being vocalized on people based on my own assumptions and hurts. And I think if we would slow down, we could do a lot more.
I agree with that completely. You know, this coming from somebody who's on a do mission right now. You're out there to impact a bunch of people. I am as well. But I think our ability to be really does open up all of ourselves. I mean, I would tell you that was my biggest divide. I learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance. So it was a deep conditioned element of like what I did or how I was going to be viewed, my worth equaled, right? And it was always contingent is how I perceived it, right? Whether that was right or wrong, that's what conditioned me. And so as a result of it, it was always like, I needed to do more, right? I need to do. And in my ability to learn to be that, you know, the more I can be, the more I am. And it opens us to so many different ways. You do such profound work with helping people break down so many of the patterns of what we talked about today. And you integrate a multidisciplinary approach and it's powerful. What are the top 1 or 2 ways or methodologies or frameworks or processes or things that you lead people through that you find to have the greatest impact in helping people heal and open to who they are and be able to stand in their power and potential?
Yeah. So I think the 2 things that jump to mind with me are, you've ever heard of the iceberg theory? So that whole concept of around getting people to understand what's above the surface that you allow people to see, and what's below the surface that you ignore. But it's still impacting the way that you are guiding your ship. So really helping people dig into the drivers and the motivations that are there. And then I think that second piece is what we talked about earlier, which is the somatic aspect of understanding how your body interplays in between your thoughts and your emotions, that they're all interconnected and you cannot fully actualize and reach your highest potential in your mindset, in your mentality, in your consistency, in your behaviors, and your potential if you are disconnected from your body, if you are not listening to what your body's trying to tell you. Even when the message is not truth, it's still letting you know something's not okay, something's unresolved. So that is a huge piece, because I feel like we live in a world that's very consumer oriented. Like, people want to be consumers and consumers. And I go, it's great, but how many more books can you read? How many more podcasts can you listen to and not apply some of the things that you have talked about, so that you learn how to integrate? So I really love kind of the convergence of those 2 pieces together,
which are unbelievably powerful and truly do get people moving when they have the ability to do it. I love the word choice that you use in so many of your answers, because it to your point, and you've talked about reasons why, but you are very intentional and you're very articulate, and it's very easy to access your words, right? And what you mean behind it. You know, I think it's interesting because I think most people don't want to lean into it because of their own shame and blame cycle. The same things that keep us from advancing in equity are the same things that prevent us from leaning into growth in ourselves, right? It's the inability for people to be objective and non-judgmental in the way they operate, just even within self. Because, right, the associated elements of, oh, this is my fault versus it becomes my responsibility are very, very different when we start to realize, like, the trauma that you inherited was in no way your fault. Right. And it was, to your point, a choice and a responsibility to move through it. And so what I find interesting is that people will accept the pain and suffering that exists in their lives instead of finding ways to alleviate that. Why do you believe people trap themselves in their pain?
I think it's hard to fight for something you can't see. So they can't envision anything beyond their current suffering and what they know. They haven't been taught. It's hard to believe for something that you have not experienced. Unless you come across somebody else and you hear their story, or you hear their process, or watch them and go, right? Because part of what I think my trauma, my own healing has taught me that is, good gracious, if I can resolve these stories and come out halfway okay, better is possible. You know, and not allowing themselves, like you said, to sit and resign to that suffering. And then the other reality is, people do that because it's easier. There's an aspect of, right, the pain of staying the same versus the pain of change. Oh, I really do want to feel better, but I don't want to do anything about it. Okay, I'll see you there next year. So that's that boldness piece of, it only changes when you move. You can have all the awareness and insight you want to, but if you don't make a move towards integration and practice it and reconnect and disconnect and restructure those synapses and how your body's wired and all those things, you will stay stuck.
Do you know the Sanskrit meaning for the word karma?
I don't remember it.
It's action. One of the greatest lessons I learned and teach my kids is the world will never judge you based on your intent. The world will always judge you based on your actions, because your actions are how you demonstrate who you are to the world. Right. And so in so many ways, it's helping people start to realize that it's like, if they have an intent, intent without action never matters. Right. And again, do you have an intent to be miserable your whole life? Do you have intent to be disconnected your whole life?
Yeah.
Like most people, the answer to that is definitively no.
Right.
You know, there was a comment. In fact, I'm going to look it up on this so I can read it to you,
Yeah.
because it was something that I was reading the other day that landed hard for me. Hard. And the quote jumps out, but it really relates to some pretty powerful concepts. So,
and this was a comment around like the sitting still and the inaction, or?
No, to the point of just even disconnection that can exist for people who don't put themselves into motion.
Yeah.
And this whole concept of even the zero-sum game that we're talking about. True success means no longer being ruled by the concept of success and failure. And then what roots it even further, and there's some elements that build to this, but it essentially says, as our ancestors discovered, failure really means one thing: to be isolated.
Now that's interesting. I've not heard that. Failure means one thing: to be isolated. Interesting.
And when they talk about it historically in our ancestral, even in our tribal culture, right? I was just talking to somebody who just had traveled to different parts of Africa, and that was one of the things they talked about, was the culture and community that existed, right? I mean, there's a sense of community and a collective consciousness that exists in those communities that we've seemed to lost touch of here in the West. But what it goes on to say is, it says, the moment you cut yourself off from your tribal support network, you lose touch with the living chain that supports and nourishes you. Nowadays, we've become so adept at survival that if you have enough money, you can flourish in isolation without ever seeing it. And it comes back and breaks things down even further. But it's right. Failure is only an outcome when you cut yourself off from the whole.
Wow. Which is really interesting, because I feel like at the same time, there's so many people that are not flourishing in isolation.
Right.
Right. And one of our top issues that we know in the world is loneliness.
Right. And that's what they're trying to correlate. Is it's like the things where we're protecting ourselves, again, disconnect us. But it's like isolation. We have never had more ability to connect as a society, as a world, with technology, with access across the board. Never have we had such a gift. Yet I would argue that we've never been so disconnected.
You're spot on. But I also feel like that same technology, and I don't know if it's the fault of technology, I think because it is everyone's highlight reel, that it pushes this inauthentic.
Yeah, people don't know who to trust.
Yeah, my son calls Instagram, for example, he's so funny, he wrote this in a song, the show and tell for adults.
Well, I mean, it's the highlight reel.
Yeah. You know, and people. Not for everybody. You know,
no, I mean, you and I are showing real stuff all the time.
Right, all the time. You know, but I think so many people have lost who they are, don't know who they are, or don't know how to show up, because, you know, I see this a lot where followers don't translate to friends.
They don't.
In any way, shape, or form. You can have a ton of people there that are there to consume as long as you're giving. But when you pull back and you're in those moments, who comes looking for you?
Yeah. Who do you go to when you need help, since so many come to you?
My husband is my rock.
Beautiful.
We have been together for 27 years, married 25, and...
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. He is incredible. I mean, I've known it. I married him. But I feel like I'm even seeing that in different ways, because I can be whatever I need to be with him. You know, he's not intimidated by my brilliance, and also loves me in weakness. And that doesn't change on either side. There's no push. He's very good with, like, wherever you need to be, I'm just here. He's like this.
I'm just there alongside you.
Yeah, quiet strength. So when I look at life now and I think, man, where would I be? Because it was not my intention to get married early. I was like, I don't really need a man. I don't want to get married. You know, kind of thing. So the fact that I even got married young and had kids young was not a part of my trajectory. But I look at it now, and it's such a factor of stability. And I do also have a handful of really incredible women in my life that see me.
Good.
You know, and to them, I'm just Charryse, which I need those spaces, and
Of
I'm
course you do.
crazy and silly and sending them stupid videos, and also like tell me not to say what I want to say to this person. And oh my gosh, I'm nervous, I'm gonna puke, and they're like, calm down, you'll be fine. So I have a good solid bunch of those.
We need people like that.
Oh my gosh, so good.
So as a healer and an empath, how have you learned to identify your energy and the energy of others so that you can not be fully drained?
It is a process. I think what I've learned and continue to learn is how much space I need based on what I'm about to give out. Because there's times when I've just gone and gone and gone, and then I'm like frozen and like I need to be in a dark room for 48 hours.
Or 4 weeks, whatever.
Or 4 weeks. Don't say anything, that kind of thing. So I have had to, balance my words. But I'm also more open to letting people know now. Like I will go into a speaking environment and go, hey, what's best for me, if possible, is to be off by myself before that moment. Because if I'm engaging with everybody, I'm drained by the time you get on stage. And so that's super helpful. While it would be great even sometimes to not always engage, depending upon the magnitude, I understand the value and the importance of that. So it's, I don't dislike people. It's not that in any way, shape, or form. So
you couldn't do what you do if you disliked people. Like there's no way you could. No,
But I, I'm open to like letting people know I am saturated. So there's running jokes to people that know me well, that I interact with on the base. They're like, she's going to be there, but she's going to be on the outside of the circle of all the people and that kind of thing. Because I'm very passionate about what I do, but I don't like actually being the center of attention. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. If I'm talking about something that's helpful, that's fine. But when that's over, like, you're like, I'm just human. We're good. Yeah. And then, on my own personal time, I do a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga and breath work, a lot of movement, physical activity, and just honestly, quiet is such a gift.
It really is.
Really is.
It really is. By the way, I just so that you know, you're not the only person that's like that pre and post stage in many cases. I literally retreat. Yes. I don't. And what's interesting is I used to associate the tells my body was giving me as stress or anxiety. It's energy waiting to be deployed. Yeah. Right. And so to that point, exactly, like if I'm deploying it before I actually take stage to deliver the message that I need, then I can't even carry what I need to next. Yeah. I like to be in rooms sometimes to hear what others have said ahead of time, like get a little feel. So I'm one of those that will enter into the room and then 30 to 40 minutes before my talk, I disappear. Yes. Right. And then I also disappear on the backside. Yeah. And I used to carry a lot of shame around that for a long time because everybody's like, well, you need to be out there, you need to be social. Right. But I was just in an event in Atlanta and I wasn't even speaking on this particular day. I was there. I had my cameras with me. I was just taking pictures of the other speakers because speakers never get enough headshots. And I'm like, if I have the equipment, I always do it when I'm a speaker in an event. I'm like, I'm not a paid photographer, but I'm like, I can get, right? So I did all that. And then at the end of the event, like there was a big day and I'd been interacting with folks all day. Then they moved to this networking event in the back of the room. And I grabbed out my laptop. I sat down and I started editing the pictures from the day. And I come into the networking room like a little while later. And I had two people, they're like, oh, it's nice of you to finally join us. Right. Yeah. And I want to be really clear when I say this. I didn't have it, like, I'm not upset with them. Again, this is to the whole permission of what people say and feel. Right. And I just, in that moment was like, you know what? I've learned that I need a lot more quiet and alone time than I ever thought I needed. And so I'm ready to be in this room now. Right. Done. Yeah. Right. Conversation ended because it's, I used to have to justify, explain. No, that's who I am. Yeah. And I've learned that now, but I know, but that's what I'm saying. I think it's so powerful that you have that, but I want to let you know too, like you're not alone. No, that's good because I'm like, how in the world do you come, present, network, and then you guys want to have a half hour and then another dinner afterwards? And I'm like, I cannot. That's just not, and that's not who I am. Yeah. And anytime I'm in an environment that lacks depth, it zaps me. Oh. Right? Like unbelievable. Like because I am an empath as well. I feel everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like you with my intellect and what I'm feeling and absorbing in my emotions. It's like a million signals going off. Anything that lacks depth doesn't interest me anymore.
Yeah. And my attention is out and you can see it. I can't hide it.
Yeah.
So those are elements. So I feel like I'm learning that. I am learning the spaces that flow well with who I am, and then communicating who I am and being okay with the moments that, hey, this is not a good fit. But I feel like the more I do that, the more spaces open,
of course,
that fully align. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, like, this is really great.
Yeah. You talked about yoga and meditation and movement. And if I remember, you have places that you have others who can join alongside you doing that, correct?
Yes, I do.
So I'd love to, as we wrap kind of towards this interview, I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you, your books, your programs, the app that you're using. So let's go there and we'll shift the conversation. So let's start with the yoga and meditation. What does that look like? How can people actually connect with you in that?
Yeah, so the space that I do yoga and meditation on is an amazing wellness app called Cadre, Cadre. And Cadre is not just for yoga and meditation. Let me say that it has creators and providers from all different spectrums, whether it's business, DEI, parenting, mental health aspects. But when I came across this connection, and it was really just a divine moment of alignment, then we realized we have something that we can do in terms of creating equity and access for people to be on this platform. So I go on there once a week and do a live that talks about various things around mental well-being, right? And just even removing the concept of you only need to work on your mental well-being when something's wrong, but that, like our physical health, we need to work on our mental and emotional health at the same time. And then if I'm going to be inclusive of my process, then I also do yoga on there and meditations on there that are just kind of short and sweet that people can be a part of and access 24 hours a day without all of the overwhelm that may come, you know, from all the notifications, all the other things. So.
I love that. I mean, that's one of those areas where technology has really given us a chance to connect in a way that even 3 years ago wasn't possible.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, COVID really did force some innovations to create pathways and avenues for people to do that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you walked in and saw the studio that we have. It's like, this didn't exist pre-COVID. It didn't because I didn't have a need for it.
Right.
Right. Even though I was speaking on the traditional brick and mortar stages. It was like I had a very linear, but it's like then digital marketing, though it's been around for 15 years.
No, we totally didn't appreciate it.
There's certain people like myself who didn't lean into it fully.
Same.
Right. But now people have access to it. I think that's incredible. And I love that you've got some regularity and consistency in what you're doing on that platform. Talk to us about your books.
Yeah. So first book was called Expired Mindsets,
okay.
Which was written in the middle of pandemic when everyone felt
I saw it right there.
Yes. When everyone, this is designed by my son, when everyone was like, oh my goodness, here's all these things that I thought I had dealt with, but now that I'm in the house and can't move and can't be busy, it's all here.
Yeah.
And really kind of working through that dynamic. And then my most recent book that was just out like last Saturday was Get Off the Scale and Heal, which is centered around our quintessential quest to, if I look good, then I am good. Are you really?
Right.
Right. And so not discounting wanting to look well in your physical self, but don't use it as counterfeit, basically. And how sometimes we can go about that at an angle that means that we're not paying attention to the internal process that's impacting the physical. So really excited about that one.
I love it. I can't wait to read that one. That sounds amazing. And by the way, I did all of those things for years.
Yeah, as we all do. Well, if I just look good, then you'll think I'm great. Okay.
And it wasn't even a conscious thought in many of those cases. Correct. It just was so deeply ingrained. I was like, oh, and in the times that I actually probably looked the best, I was the worst inside.
Yes.
I love that. I can't wait to dig into that book.
Yeah. So
where can people find your books?
So books can be found on Amazon.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And I'll be there in 2 days, unless there's some
shipping. You can't beat that.
Oh, I love it. As we wrap here, I am curious, what is your legacy going to be?
The way I made people feel.
Bingo.
Yeah. I don't care about anything else. You don't have to remember anything that I say. But when we're in the same space or in spaces, even through media, I want to leave you feeling good, seen, loved, and empowered.
I love that. If you had a closing thought to leave our audience with, what would it be?
Never give up. Never think that all is lost, that it's always going to be this way. Breathe and take one sip.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Truly appreciate our dialogue. And for those of you that just watched Dr. Charryse jump in, she flipped her lid. We went deep and we definitely unpacked a bunch of stuff. I think we might have uncovered a little bit of treasure formed in some of that trash pressure as well. But she lives by example of what's possible for each and every one of us. What she communicates and how accessible it is, I'm hoping that you learned something about yourself through this process. Her consistent commitment to communicate externally her internal suffering and pains of her past is what gives you permission and words to articulate and understand your situation in a way maybe you haven't considered before. But now it's going to come down to a couple of basic things. You have to act and do. How do you take this intent, this education, this knowledge, this wisdom that flows through such a brilliant human being and allow yourself to apply it into your life? Because remember, the world will never judge you based on your intent. It'll only judge you based on your actions. So flip open your lid and scan your can.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com.